Be careful with your talking to yourself.
Okay, good. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to PD Active's inaugural online roundtable. My name is Todd Morish, and I will be your moderator and host this afternoon. I'm on the board of PD Active, and I chair the events committee. So feedback from our most recent survey informed us that you, our members, were looking for a smaller, more engaging format than our larger speaker forums, but also one more specialized and topic focused than support groups, hence the roundtable. So this particular roundtable is what we are referring to as a community sharing roundtable, where we have a panel of our own PD Active members speak about their experiences on a given topic, then we open up to Q&A and discuss. This particular title today is DBS, what we know and what we don't know, what to expect. Before I introduce our panelists, a little bit of housekeeping. First, we will experiment today with two moderating approaches. Number one, once our panelists have been introduced, we will put all attendees on mute and encourage you to submit questions either through the Zoom chat feature, which I'll demonstrate in a moment here, or by literally raising your hand so that we may unmute you for you to ask your question. Mary and I will do our best to call on all the raised hands. The second approach, in the second half of our hour, we will unmute everyone for wide open conversational flow. Our goal is to determine which approach is more pleasing and less intrusive. These roundtables have, our objective with these roundtables is to keep them small and intimate, so we've capped the number at 25. In fact, with a couple last additions, we've got probably 27 folks on, not including our another member of my events committee, Mary, and then our panelists. This webinar will be recorded, and we will make a copy of it available in the next few days, pending quality of that recording. Finally, PD Active depends on donations to bring programs like this to our members free of charge, and we remain grateful for your contributions. If you have not yet had a chance to make the suggested registration donation of $10 for this roundtable, I will paste that link in the chat feature right now. So give me 1 second while I do that, and this will be a good example of how the chat feature works, as long as I can get it to work. So I am pasting into a chat window on this call right now the PD Active donate link. I hope you can all see that. If you're not familiar with Zoom, keep in mind that there is a toolbar at the bottom of your Zoom window that sometimes disappears unless and until you mouse over it. So if you mouse over the bottom area of your Zoom window, you will see features like mute on the left and stop video on the left, but then also security, participants, etc. And one of those is chat. So far, so good. Now, without further delay, PD Active is pleased to introduce to you our panelists for today's round robin, Mike Gable, Amy Scheinbaum, and hopefully Karen Garrison. Karen and Mike and Amy, let's see, has Karen had a chance to join? Doesn't look like it yet. Okay, then let me introduce to you Mike and Amy. And if Karen jumps on, we will introduce her as well. Mike and Amy, thank you very much for joining us today.
Well, thanks.
So please take a minute to introduce yourselves. Tell us, if you dare, your age, when and where you had your DBS surgery, and any other details pertinent to your experience. Mike, why don't we start with you, and then Amy, and then we'll let Karen chime in when we get to her.
Well, thanks, Todd, and welcome everybody in the afternoon here to talk and hear. I'm always a bit nervous for these kind of events. So I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to have to read my next introductory remarks, and then I'll come back in real spontaneous time and be with you all verbally and not get too lost in my thoughts here. So I'm 70 years old, and I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease 7 years ago. I had deep brain stimulation surgeries done last fall at Kaiser Redwood City. 3 years ago, I began seeing my current neurologist, Dr. Hanley, and my PD had progressed to where my balance was very poor, and I was freezing every day between high doses of levodopa. I was falling several times a week and occasionally more than once in a day. I was also experiencing unpredictable episodes of extreme dizziness and fatigue. Dr. Lee gradually convinced me to consider DBS. He explained why he thought I was a good candidate, and he recommended that I go through the DBS screening process that Kaiser has in place. I did my own research looking at a variety of medical studies. I talked with people who had had it done, and I went through a lot of soul searching about whether it was the best course of action for me to take advantage and to manage my Parkinson's. In June of last year, I finally decided to proceed, 2019. I was tremendously anxious for the months leading up to the surgery. I was reassured, though, by meeting and talking with several of the key people who are part of Kaiser's DBS surgical team. They included Aaron Crawford, who programs the DBS stimulator devices, Dr. Mark Cedric, a neurosurgeon well known for his precision in placing the high-tech wire leads into the brain targets for DBS. At Dr. Cedric's recommendation, I opted for the two-surgery approach. The first was at the end of October to insert the DBS wire lead into my left brain, which is right here. The anesthesiologist gave me enough medication to be completely calm and remain awake. The surgical consensus is that being awake during most of the DBS surgery helps guide the surgeon to most accurately place the leads. The first surgery went exceedingly well, with a wonderful physician's assistant named Diana sitting next to me, and the whole time, it was her sole job to help me and scratch my itch, swab my mouth, hold my hand, and she did all of the above, actually. I did experience some severe discomfort and some pain from the intense pressure caused by the head brace used to keep my head perfectly still throughout the operation. The most difficult part was wearing the head brace for 5 hours while I was awake. I went home after one night in the hospital and recovered quickly from the surgery with no complications. I returned for the second surgery 2 weeks later, this time more comfortable and confident that the whole process would be easier and the second time around, which it was. Dr. Cedric inserted the lead into my right brain this time and placed the neurostimulator device in my chest. He then connected everything up, or so we all thought. The next morning, he informed us that a wire had become disconnected on the right side of my skull. Apparently, nothing like this had ever happened before. We would have to come back in 5 or 6 days to fix it. So Amy, our daughter Sophie, and I all drove back to Redwood City a few days later for third surgery on November 12th, which was much less invasive and faster. And this time, Dr. Cedric got it right, and the DBS system worked perfectly. The surgeries were long and arduous, but I got through them because Amy here helped me at every turn, physically, logistically, and emotionally. I honestly don't know how I would have gotten through the surgeries without her. Today, I'm moving significantly better than I was before. Before DBS, I used a transport chair, like a wheelchair, which we would keep in the car and use it when I couldn't walk at all, which happened pretty often. The furthest I could walk, even with my canes, was a half a block or less. After DBS, the transport chair now stays in the garage. I walk up to 2 miles a day, almost always without canes, and I'm taking 1/3 less levodopa per day than I was before. Overall, my quality of life is much better as a result of DBS. I'm very happy and grateful for this temporary reprieve from the PD symptoms that most affect my ability to move. However, I sometimes lapse into rapid speech, which you may have noticed, which is difficult to understand and lose my train of thought, have a lot of trouble tracking conversations. These speech and cognitive problems and other long-term struggles with anxiety and depression don't seem to have been affected either way by the DBS. In any case, the results of the DBS have been overwhelmingly positive for me, and I'm very glad I chose to do it. That's all I have. It's an intro.
Well done. Yes. Thanks, Mike. And one of the reasons we asked Amy to join us as a panelist is precisely because she has not had DBS, but because she is a care partner for someone who has, namely her husband, Mike. And while I turn the mic over to you, Amy, I will get this call from Karen Garrison. So carry on, please.
Oh, okay. Hi, everybody. Let's see. When Dr. Lee suggested that Mike have the DBS, I was actually a little surprised because I had the impression that it was most effective for people who had really bad tremors. And Mike, for the most part, doesn't have. He has some internal tremors, but that's not as big a problem. But I think we came to agree with him, as Mike said, from my point of view, based on 3 reasons. One was the hope that with the reducing of the muscle rigidity, which is something that DBS does, that he would freeze less, that he would shuffle less, that he would fall less. Also, I really hoped that the amount, he was taking so much medication that he was kind of rapidly going to what might be the maximum that he could take. And with that came dyskinesias, primarily facial dyskinesias, but some shoulders and hands and arms, which if that becomes really bad, then that can make it even more difficult, to hold a cup or to put your clothes on, that kind of thing. One of the things I wanted to emphasize, which maybe is obvious, but I'll say it anyway, I think that Mike and I sort of knew from the very beginning that we were going to be partners in this PD journey. As a little aside, my father had Parkinson's for almost 30 years, and I saw kind of what path to not go down, because my parents really did not find a way to be good partners together through this challenging disease. So following that, we made the decision together to do that the DBS would make sense. And of course, if you look at it closely, like any surgery, you can become very frightened by the extremely small percentage chance of dire consequences. But we decided to go more with the vast majority of success. And I think maybe we only heard of one person who regretted having it out of, many, many people we had talked to. I don't know how it is at UCSF or Stanford. I know at Kaiser, I was extremely pleased with how much the care partner like me was part of the team. I was present for the evaluations, for the neuropsych evaluation, where they're looking, obviously they had to look to see physically, was he in a good place to have DBS? Emotionally, was he in a good enough place? And cognitively. Because if you had more than minimal or mild cognitive problems, this wasn't going to be a good path for you to take. And I think some of that is because, you have to pay attention. You're adjusting your device. You're going and you're working with the programmer. You have to remember to charge it once a week. If cognitively you're kind of losing it, it would be hard, I think, to track that. I was a Kaiser employee for 30 years, and I was a little worried about having this done at Kaiser because at least in the department I worked in, a lot of people were very burnt out, and I was sort of worried about that. And I got to say, if anybody has Kaiser and they're considering it, I could practically cry at how I could not imagine more of a dream team. Dr. Cedric is, they all are, they're so respectful, they're so competent, they love their work, they're so devoted to it, they have great senses of humor. It was great. And Redwood City is, really good branch of Kaiser. I was the most worried about how Mike would do with having to stay awake for the majority of time and being in the head brace. I was worried that he'd be scared and that they wouldn't be able to calm him enough. But they reassured both of us, as Mike said themselves, that, they could give him, the anesthesiologist could give him some sedative that would help calm him. And it was so crucial having this physician's assistant, Diana, who she said to Mike first time she met him, she said, "I'm going to be your best friend in the operating room." And it really was her only job, to just be there with Mike. And that was very reassuring to me, that we would have that. And while we were waiting for the various surgeries, my daughter and me, somebody came out about once an hour to give us an update, let us know how it was. They also let us both be with him in pre-op, and they let us both be with him in post-op. If someone is thinking about doing this during the time of COVID, you know, one big challenge is you can't go, oh, Michelle's raising her hand, okay, hi, Michelle. You can't have someone come in and wait in the waiting room, and you probably cannot have someone stay in the hospital room with you overnight. I think from talking to two people who had other surgeries in the last couple of months, that the hospital staff knows that the nurses, that the nurse assistants, they have to step up and be a lot more involved with you because you don't have your partner with you. And, you know, if you don't have a partner, through the evaluation process and maybe through also the adjustments to the stimulator, if you have an adult child or a best friend or a sibling who can be with you, I think it's enormously helpful, because I really see my main job as Mike's medical advocate, his support person physically and emotionally. So let's see, was there anything else? The other thing is that there is, I think some places do DBS where you are have general anesthetic the whole time. As Mike said, for the most part, he didn't. But when they were winding the leads down and attaching his stimulator, he was under a general anesthetic for that. But it was a short period of time. And yeah, I think that's about it. But I also feel very, very grateful and glad that he did it. As he said, pre-DBS, he could walk about a half a block or a block. Now with COVID, you know, we can do like 2-mile hikes, walks together. He can walk down to our canyon and up, which is what, 1,000-foot climb?
Yeah, 27 floors on that.
27 floors on your marker on your phone.
Wow.
So, yeah. Okay, enough.
Terrific. Thank you, Amy and Mike. And as if with perfect magic timing, Karen has joined us. Karen, welcome. I'm going to try to unmute you here. Hang on a second. And then we're going to let you give yourself a quick 1-minute or 2-minute introduction. Not letting me unmute you. I'll try it over here. Hang on a second.
She could maybe unmute herself.
Are you able to do that, Karen?
How's that?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Oh,
Okay. And
thank
if anybody can't hear me at any time, just like give me the signal.
All right, you're fine. When you're done, we're going to jump over to a couple questions. I saw Michelle raise her hand, so hang in there, everybody. Karen's going to give a quick intro, then we'll move to questions. Go for it, Karen.
Well, actually, I was supposed to give a 5-minute intro, so I'll just chop off some. But I was diagnosed 9 years ago. I've had DBS last October at UCSF with the super talented Doris Wong as my surgeon and an all-female team. I'm 70 years old. And for most of the time I lived with Parkinson's, I never imagined myself ever getting DBS. I managed my symptoms well, and the disease was progressing, but my quality of life was high and I didn't expect any sudden changes. But sudden changes arrived. Off time, when levodopa simply failed to work, would start to happen unpredictably. And in the off state, my legs would go rigid and refuse to bear weight. My feet and toes would cramp painfully. I know some of you have these symptoms, making it impossible for me to walk and sometimes to stand. On top of this, I was taking loads of levodopa and finding it tough to manage with only a couple of hours between doses. So eventually, after a lot of research, my husband and I decided to go ahead with it, with the DBS. And I was going to talk briefly about a couple of the decisions you have to make, of the several that you have to make. One involving, let's see, one involving whether you're going to be awake. I think you were just talking about that, and I probably don't want to talk any more about it if you've covered it. The other important decision is what brain target to aim for. The two common targets, STN and GPI, provide essentially the same relief for motor symptoms. Have you guys talked about this today already?
We haven't yet.
Okay.
Why don't you explain
Okay.
what those acronyms stand for?
But each of those targets may have small differences in side effects. My team and I chose GPI because it's slightly less likely to have adverse effects on cognitive function. And minimizing cognitive decline was really important to me. The STN, in contrast, is more likely to result in reduced doses of levodopa, which is an important objective for a lot of people at this stage of Parkinson's. Post-surgery, my cognitive functions seem pretty stable, but who knows, really. And against the odds, I'm taking about 30% less levodopa. So GPI, though it's less popular, was a good fit for me. Other results have been very heartening. I had an amazing symptom-free honeymoon in the 2 weeks before the device was even turned on, and a smooth and relatively problem-free recovery. My top goal with DBS was to be able to walk again without worrying about my legs and feet failing me. Since the surgery, I've been walking every day, and about once a week, my husband David and I hike 6 to 8 miles, worry-free. I don't have to sweat it anymore. And that's a huge gift. I sometimes forget I have PD, although the reminders are pretty constant. I still have Parkinson's face mask, but with COVID-19, who can even tell? I still get stiff in the morning and tired in the afternoon. My voice is small and raspy, but my quality of life is vastly improved, and I'm really happy to have done it. That's my intro.
Good job, Karen. Thank you very much. That's very nice. Good. So that gives us 3 perspectives. Kaiser and Karen, yours was UCSF, and then a care partner also. So I submitted my own email when I sent out the invitations for folks to submit questions in advance. I do have a few questions submitted by a few folks in advance. I'll get to those in a minute, but we already know that Michelle Johnson had a question. And by the way, a reminder that if you have a question, give us the old classic schoolhouse, raise your hand. Make sure that your video is turned on. I do see that Evelyn and James and Michael and a few folks have their video off. If you're raising your hand and your video is off, we cannot see that. So Michelle, I'm going to take your mute off and go ahead and ask us your question right now.
Right, I wasn't really saying that I wanted to ask a question, but I just had DBS a couple of months ago during the COVID pandemic. And I decided to do it early, right after they opened up for elective surgery, because I figured people would take more risks later on. And so I was right. And I'm having kind of the reverse problem. I was able to walk for miles before my surgery, and I can't walk now. And I don't have a partner, so it's a great strain on my children. But I know they'll find the sweet spot eventually. And Karen, that was very inspiring that you can walk as far, and Mike too. Because now I can't walk very far at all.
Could you repeat that last sentence?
Oh, yeah, I'm very encouraged by you saying that Mike can go down the Wildcat Canyon. Because I know how steep that is. And that Karen said she can go a long way too.
Yeah.
Because I can't walk right now. And we've been doing adjustments since June 30th.
And your surgery was when exactly, Michelle?
May 26th and June
May 26th.
16th.
Yeah,
So
we often hear that it takes quite a while for the all the benefits and side effects to kick in sometimes. For some
Right.
people, it's right immediate. For others, it's extended. Like some things are still changing for me after 8 months.
Yeah. So
Minor
what was
things.
interesting is people kept telling me how wonderful it was, but I didn't get any idea that it was going to take this long.
Mm.
And apparently I've got to be patient, and I'm not very good at being patient.
It's
I
hard.
also got edema in the brain and got very confused.
You
I
got
recovered.
swelling. Did you say swelling of the brain?
I was also in Redwood City, Kaiser,
Guys are
and I
ready.
loved the team was amazing.
Good.
I had the other surgeons.
Good. That's great. Michelle, thank you very much. I'm going to keep moving along here. Paul, I see your hand raised. You are almost off mute.
Right here.
Oh.
Paula,
Okay, go for it, Paula.
I've had DBS for 4 years now. I had in 2016. And it's been a real mixed bag. I had a horrific tremor before DBS. I have almost no tremor now, as you can see.
That's great. That's
So that was great. I had the opposite experience to what Mike and Karen say. I think both of you said that you're able to walk a long way. It did the opposite for me. I was able to walk fine before surgery. After surgery, I've lost my balance and I've lost the ability to walk very far because I seem to have bad breathing problems. So it's been a real mixed bag. I did have the STN rather than the GPI. And I also had Boston Scientific as opposed to Medtronic. I was wondering if anyone else here has had Boston Scientific. I had it done at Kaiser Redwood City, same as you did, Mike. And I also had a very good experience with the surgery, the recovery, no problem. And I had a fantastic honeymoon period where I was dancing around like a 20-year-old. But I've lost my speech, I've lost my balance, I've lost my ability to walk very far. I fall if I'm not very careful. So it's been a mixed experience. It took away the tremor, but it gave me a lot of other bad things. I was wondering if anyone else has had Boston Scientific's Versailles system, and also if you have a good programmer.
Karen, I see your hand up.
Yeah, so those are exactly the things that DBS is not likely to help with. Balance, speech, and cognitive issues is one of those things too. My
Well,
approach
help
to
Mike.
that, pardon?
They helped Mike.
You helped your
That's good.
colleague.
not the speech or the
Not the speech.
cognitive, but the
But I mean
balance.
the
Speech
walking.
and the balance.
But
So
Karen and I both have the Versailles system, the latest one,
the Boston Scientific, yeah.
Boston Scientific, and they really have improved somewhat on the technology, although that hasn't been the key feature, but that's one of the things. It has gotten a little bit better. I'm sorry to hear that it's not working for you as well. It's just,
Well, Paula, can I ask you a couple questions?
Sure.
One is, have you done anything directly to try to work on the balance issues like Tai Chi or yoga or any of those kinds of things?
No.
Because you might want to think about that. I had balance problems too in the beginning, and I still am not quite back to normal. I just started falling a lot when I was hiking. And at first it seemed like I couldn't do anything about it. And then I really started concentrating on my balance, and I started taking Tai Chi, and I think it's helping. So I would encourage you to consider that. I know it's got to be hard to do that when you can't walk well. But you can do some of these things in your own living room on Zoom. So there's a really good Tai Chi class now.
Yeah, Otto Dittmer does a really good Tai Chi class for pediatric. I swear by it. All right, let's bounce over to Benjamin. Ben, you go by Ben or Benjamin? You got your hand raised. Let's go for it.
Benjamin, I prefer Benjamin, but I'll answer anything pretty much. But it's fascinating to me how different everybody's experience is. And it makes me think that Parkinson's is really unknown altogether, what it is and what the symptoms are. Everybody's symptom picture is completely different. I had DBS about 4.5 years ago in LA, and my doctor was fantastic. I had no pain at all during the surgery, and I was up during the middle of the surgery, but the anesthesiologist was able to bring me in and out when they wanted me to be awake. So it was very fine-tuned treatment, and the recovery was very good. I had a pretty severe tremor that I knew I couldn't live with any longer, and I couldn't take my 27 pills of Cinnamon anymore. But my medication is down by about more than half now, and I'm still working full time, and I still walk every day, and I'm in pretty good shape. I lost 20 pounds recently, very intentionally to keep less weight on my body, and I think that's made a huge difference for me in terms of how I feel. But the things that I have, I talked to my doctor. I still see Dr. Klingman up in Walnut Creek, even though he's moved on to the stroke lab up in Kaiser up in Walnut Creek. He still sees me once every 6 months if I bug him enough. And but it's just fascinating how different everything is. My main complaint right now is the numbness I have in my feet and my neuropathy in my legs that comes and goes with the medication. And but in terms of my balance and walking and stuff like that, I'm pretty good. And
would you say
it's fascinating to me. And I'll talk to the doctor or something. He'll say, "Oh, that's not a symptom of Parkinson's." And I'll say, "All these symptoms didn't just come over my body the day after I got Parkinson's." And so to me, it's all Parkinson's.
So Benjamin, would you say that balance and the tremors are the two biggest improvements since DBS 4 years ago for you?
You know, the biggest that came from the DBS is the tremor. I have no external tremor at all. I do have an internal fluttering every once in a while, that mimics anxiety. But I was never anxious before. Now I have anxiety, but I think it's more from the fluttering and stuff than it is from anything else.
Yeah.
I don't think it's real anxiety.
That's good. All right. Well, if there's any feedback for Benjamin, carry on. Otherwise, I'm going to read a couple questions that came in by email. Let me do this one here. This is poignant and timely. This is from our member, Teresa. Teresa says, "My surgery has been put off because of COVID-19. If I do have the surgery, I will have to be dropped off at the door of the hospital alone. Then I will be picked up at the front door by my family. I will completely be in the care of people I really do not know, and they do not know me. I really do appreciate this opportunity to talk to people who have gone through DBS." So that is the context, and here are a few questions, and I'll chop them up a little bit. But I thought it was poignant because if anybody's considering going through the experience nowish or soonish, you know, Teresa's right there wondering if she should be doing it now or wait until the pandemic and the quarantine lift. But one question is, what did you do mentally before and during the DBS surgery to help you through it? I suppose more meaningful is the before. I'm not sure what kind of mental exercises you can do during, but we'll get to that. So did you have one or two surgeries? I will be having two. My second surgery will be 2 weeks later, left side, then right. So why don't we start with that? Mike, would you like to speak to what you might have done before mentally to sort of prep and get you through it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a whole series of different things I've tried and have done over many years, kind of a almost cognitive behavioral kind of things, calming myself in meditation. I did a lot of reading. Actually, what calmed me was reading a lot of literature, which tended to make me believe that in my particular kind of Parkinson's, DBS probably was going to be effective. I mean, medical studies reassured me rather than scared me. It's really hard to point to one thing because, you know, it's almost like on a spiritual level, you kind of hope for the best and you kind of feel like this is going to be okay. There's no, for me, there's no magic bullet or no one thing. It's kind of music and all the usual things you do with Parkinson's to keep yourself engaged and calm as best you can. So, I wouldn't say there's anything that I would know that I would recommend to anyone in particular. But you got to find your own way to do that. So.
Yeah. Sure. Well, here's another one for you, and then I've got one for Amy. What was it like the first time the DBS device was turned on? Mike and Karen, would you like to take that? Why don't you start with that, Karen?
Yeah.
Gosh, I don't really remember that particular moment, in part because the benefits kick in immediately because of the lesioning effect of the electrodes. So before they even turn you on, you often get a benefit. Not everybody, but many people get a benefit. And mine was so good that I didn't want it to end. It was at least 2 weeks, or maybe into 3. And I think it was still happening
The
when it
device was
turned
even
on.
turned on 3 weeks after surgery?
I don't remember whether it was at 10 days or 3 weeks,
Ah,
but it was kind of continuous benefits for that first month, as far as I recall. What do you remember, Mike?
So my device was turned on about 10 days after the last surgery. And like Karen, the doctor explained, the lesions of the surgery, the lesions create a stimulation that's like the ultimate stimulation by the neurostimulator. So it's kind of giving me a rush and kind of a honeymoon period Karen talked about. But what happened to me is she gave me a program and then I turned it off by mistake and I didn't realize it. I wasn't like, hey, it's not really working too well, is it? And I go back and I pressed the red button. The red button turns the whole thing off. I didn't realize to press it. So like a week I was going without it. This isn't working too well. I turned the red button back on. But there's no one point at which I could say it was the place that they started. Aaron had to tune it carefully over many visits to kind of get it to work right. So I was thinking, hopefully, Michelle, you'll have some luck over the next couple of months if something works with you to tune it better. It might make a big difference. So.
right. Amy, Teresa had a question for the care partner. What were the 3 main things that your PD partner had the most trouble or challenge with post-surgery? 1 or 2 or 3, how about that?
Gosh, that's a hard one because he really didn't have much trouble.
That's good. That's one of the best answers you could give.
Yeah, no extreme pain, a little discomfort. Mike does not like taking narcotics, so, taking a Tylenol occasionally helped. His incisions were healing well. Okay, wait, she said, what's the 3 most difficult?
Well, just the challenges that Mike experienced that you had to help him with through.
Yeah, I don't think we had challenges in the beginning.
Good.
I mean, I think after about 4 or 5 months, some of Mike's shuffling came back. Also, he started talking very quickly. And we've been told that that was not due to DBS, and it's not even Parkinson's related. Wow. Like it's purely psychiatric. So, he's on the antidepressant. They upped it a little. It doesn't affect it. And getting a little bit foggier cognitively. But again, that can be caused by DBS, but it can also be caused by Parkinson's and it can be caused by aging. So, but immediately afterwards, I can't think of anything. Yeah. Okay. It was pretty smooth sailing.
Good. Good. Any questions in the crowd out there? Any hands I've missed? Anybody care to take themselves video on and show us your faces and hands, or you want to hide? That's okay. Either one is fine. Okay, I still do have some questions coming in, so let me keep fielding those, and hopefully that will.
Well, I personally can't get my video working. This is
Teresa. Okay. I just asked a couple of your questions, Teresa. I hope you got some answers there.
Yes, I did. I heard them. But yeah, I can't figure out my video. This is the first time I downloaded the Zoom today, so yeah.
So if you mouse over your own thumbnail image from your perspective, there should be 2 little blue buttons up in the right-hand corner of that. One is mute and unmute, and then the one next to that is 3 little dots. There's a turn off video, mute audio, some other options for you in there. So play around with that a little bit, and we'll keep carrying on here. All right, no questions. I see no hands raised, so let me go on here. Michael asks, did you learn anything you wish you'd been told in advance? Look, and sort of related to that is looking back, how do you, well, we've already done that. So Mike, did you learn anything you wish you had been told in advance?
Kaiser was very thorough. I think the thing is, the second surgery had a new anesthesiologist, a young woman who, without telling me, gave me fentanyl. I didn't really want to have any kind of opioid. Suddenly I'm lying there, and suddenly I get this rush of some kind of serious opioid. It was like, holy cow. And I got sort of upset about that. But that was a little glitch, but that wasn't really anything major. And,
Yeah.
But I would encourage people to remember that, because almost everybody, well, many of the people I talked to before I had surgery mentioned that the hospital gave them fentanyl without checking with them.
Really?
And several of those people had a bad reaction to it. And it certainly makes the recovery a little harder, I think.
Interesting. Well,
But if you just question them and say, is it really necessary, or I'd rather have stronger Tylenol or something like that,
right.
the medical staff went along with that.
Yeah.
Didn't have any problem.
That seems like something that should have been covered on the checklist up front, but maybe that was a miss there. Hey, Benjamin, I took you off mute in case you wanted to chime in and throw out any ideas you had about your experience after the fact, and any things you might have wished you'd been told in advance.
No, I think the only thing that I didn't expect to be knocked, I was kind of knocked out for about 2 weeks.
Oh.
And I had heard people say they recovered in a day or something like that, and they're up and going. And it took the surgery, I think, took more out of me than the actual recovery from the Parkinson's or whatever. But I felt like the day after the surgery, I went out for a cup of coffee. And then I came back home and I stayed in bed for about 10 days.
Oh.
And didn't get up again. But then after 10 days, I started feeling stronger and got back pretty quick. And I took about 6 weeks off from work too, which was nice.
That's a good little factoid for people to know.
Yeah.
Okay. Karen, any ideas on things you
Yeah.
do in advance?
Yes. I did the surgery awake, and I just hadn't anticipated how difficult and uncomfortable my off state would be. And I think that varies person to person, so I don't know how a doctor could ever really anticipate it, except that I had a hard time with my on-off test also. It was so uncomfortable that I almost pulled the plug a couple of times. Ultimately, the result has been great. And I don't know, they can do these surgeries with you fully anesthetized. We were talking about that when I came in. Some people there may be a quality difference in terms of how precisely they can hit the right spot. But I learned that UCSF DBS patients, half of them do the surgery asleep and half awake. So it's pretty widely done, and people deal with it. It may be harder to program, and I probably just would have been stubborn and gone ahead with it if somebody had really told me more. But I think in a case like mine, where the person is really kind of thrashing around, it probably makes sense to discuss other options.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't remember ever having that discussion with my doctor. He just went into the surgery, was out, and then in the middle of the surgery, I woke up. And the anesthesiologist had definitely it was so, I think they were the unheralded hero of the whole thing, because they had such good control with the anesthetics that they brought me out and put me out, so I didn't have any pain at all during the surgery. And from the pre-op to the post-op, I didn't have any discomfort at all.
And so your 2 weeks was probably just sort of physical recovery, not so much through pain, but just letting your body come back to term.
Yeah, I definitely didn't have very much pain at all.
That's good. That's good. All right, let me jump in with a quick time check. We have 9 minutes left of what we called a 1-hour session that got off on a bit of a rocky start. So we might go a little bit long. Mike, Amy, and Karen, are you okay to drift a little bit into the next hour?
Yes.
Great.
And sorry, my fault.
I'm gonna unmute everyone, but also ask Jodine to go ahead and field her question. 1 second, Jodine. Okay, you are all unmuted. There might be a bit of a nasty delay, so if you.
How's this?
Yeah, that's good. Go for it, Jodine. Throw your question out.
I recently switched to UCSF because I see DBS in my future, and I've been really impressed with the researchers who came to our and talked about what they're doing to improve the device and improve the procedure. And I wonder if anybody has the UCSF now has a device where the electrode records as well as administers therapy. Does anybody here get that? It's like a second generation device.
Karen?
I can answer that. Yeah, it's called something like Perspec. And it's basically the Medtronic base with the 4 points with the recorder added. And it wasn't offered when we were getting ours. It wasn't offered to me anyway. And I'm not sure whether I would have gotten it. I don't know all the differences. I haven't compared them side by side, but the device that we got, the Boston Scientific, had a couple of good features in my mind. One was the fact that the battery lasts for 15 years or possibly will beyond that. So you don't have to open up your incision again.
And go ahead, Karen.
And also the leads, the electrodes are directional instead of sort of general. I can't really talk about the benefits of that one way or the other. The Perspec, I've only heard the perspective of a Boston Scientific person, so I don't really want to offer an opinion. His opinion was that they're using the Medtronic base and they're putting this recording on that's good for physicians and people who eventually might learn how to do this better. But it's not particularly valuable one way or the other to the recipient.
Let me chime in. Jodine, do you know, is this feature supposed to be recording in the sense that it's tracking data like brain stimuli responses to the different triggers?
It's supposed to shut down the device when it's not needed.
Oh.
That's what I heard, and I heard of it as a benefit to.
Oh, that might be a different thing. Sorry. The thing I'm talking about was not a shutdown, I don't think.
Jodine, you know, is that like a feedback loop where they're looking at the response of the body and the person's movement to brain waves or to stimulation in the brain or something like that? Just that's
well, I think there's some kind of feedback, but the notion, the simplistic notion of it is that the traditional DBS has always been on, like your device is on all the time, and the idea is it's not really necessary to be on all the time. It only needs to be on when you're getting into like abnormal brain patterns that are doing something abnormal to your movement. But they weren't sophisticated enough to tell when that was until this new device.
Go on, my dear.
I do know one person who has that new device, and
It's really loud.
been a lot of problems with it.
Maybe you're talking about the closed loop system, which they do have in trials at UCSF.
Patrick.
Closed loop. Okay, I'll ask about that.
Yeah, but it really was in trials. So you had to be part of a study in order to get it.
Okay.
Study that they're doing.
Closed loop. Good to know. Any questions out there? I've got a few more, but I want to make sure everybody on the call has a chance to ask.
It's about to end.
And by the way, if any folks are preferring to stay in sort of lurking and listening mode, then feel free to mute yourselves. But one question that we thought of to sort of throw at all of you that have had it, Benjamin included, Michelle maybe, did you do any specific research in advance before your DBS? One, and a second one, are you now glad that you did it?
So
Benjamin,
I did a lot of research and I asked a lot of people who've had it. But I think I was very naive when I went in for the surgery.
And
I
now,
thought the recovery time was going to be much quicker.
uh-huh.
And when they said 3 to 6 months till they find the balance, I didn't really take them at their word for that. And I was expecting pretty much instantaneous results. I also got very confused.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I couldn't do is I could no longer use my cell phone. And that's how I summoned my kid at night to help me.
Uh-huh.
And I couldn't figure out how to call my kids. I couldn't figure out, I got very frustrated.
Huh.
Because I had cerebral edema after the first surgery. And I was kept an extra night.
Right. And it's been 2.5 or 3 months, Michelle. Have you noticed any improvement even just in the last weeks?
No, well, I've been struggling in the last few weeks. And I had a program I really liked, which has put me back on that program, and it's not working at all this time. Before I was walking a mile with my poles, and now I can't get off this, I can't stop freezing and dragging my feet.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same program, and it was my favorite program so far, but it's not working now. So I don't know what to do.
Sounds
But
like,
we'll find it.
sounds like we need to
She's
get
got
back to the shop.
Yeah, I've got to go back to the shop.
Benjamin, did you do any specific research in advance that you want to share with anybody?
I did some, but I didn't do much. I got a pretty good sense of it when I met with the doctor. I knew I was going to get it pretty early.
Uh-huh.
I've been diagnosed about 8, 9 years ago. And once my tremors started getting bad, I was taking a ton of medication.
Mm-hmm.
I pushed my doctor down, and at the time I was living in San Diego. I was commuting back and forth between Oakland and San Diego, and I just felt terrible. And I thought I had to convince my doctor in San Diego to get me in for the DBS in LA. And that moved from the time I started it to the time I had, or from the time I wanted to get the DBS to the time I got it was about 4 months. And I thought, and I knew that from talking to a couple of people that I needed it, and it really changed the quality of my life completely. Like I said, I don't have a tremor. I have some of the side effects from the medication, the TB, the tardive dyskinesia, but minimal. And so for the most part, I just knew it was the right thing to do. And the doctor I had was very confident that he would be able to help me out. So it was worthwhile for sure.
Good. That's my Cinemet alarm. Sorry about that. Paula, I saw your hand raised.
Like Benjamin said, I think it was Benjamin who said that he had a tremor that he couldn't live with. I had a tremor that was so bad, I couldn't live with it. So regardless of what my research showed, I'm very glad that I had it done, even though I've had a very mixed bag.
Yeah.
I had to do it because I don't see I could live with the tremor. The tremor was the worst that anyone had ever seen. I was a librarian before I retired, so you can bet I did research it. I researched it plenty, but in the end I said, I've got to do it. I've got to do it. So.
Tremor alone, huh? And you were the same, right, Benjamin?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Well, we know we can see here that it's helping tremor, that's for sure. Amy, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say something to, Teresa, or anyone who is considering having it done during this time. A friend of mine who had breast cancer and had the surgery during this time, what she asked for and she got, and it seems to me it would work for DBS too. She asked for a medical social worker or a nurse practitioner or someone who would be kind of her person and her contact person through the surgery and afterwards. Mm-hmm. And she got someone who had several video chats with her before her surgery and also sat with her in pre-op. So even though she didn't have a family member with her, she did have a person whose job it was to basically, be her support person. So I just think it would be a good idea to ask for that.
Well, this
Right.
is Teresa. Sorry, I can't put my hand up because my video's not. But
That's
yeah,
why we're doing it this way. We open it all up and unmute everybody every now and then. So good for that. Go for it, Teresa.
but I'm going to have mine done in Redwood City at Kaiser, and I have actually talked to many a times Diana Bruce. And
Oh, that's who we had.
That's why she's terrific. She's absolutely terrific.
I could tell that she was just an angel, and it'll be a good day, I guess, when I meet her in person.
Yes.
So the fact that you did have your surgery there and you spoke highly of them, it just sounds like it's perfect.
Yeah, Diana she's a real character. She's a little bit over the top, but it really serves her well in the role that she plays. She's just really going to be your best buddy. So that's great.
And make sure you have that discussion about fentanyl or any other kind of opioid that they tend to dispense automatically, but you don't have to accept that.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't take any medication at all or painkillers at all during my surgery or after the surgery. They gave me a script for something, but I didn't even take it.
That's good to know. I mean, I think that's something a lot of people are wondering about. A lot of people ask, did it hurt? And so if you weren't feeling pain.
I didn't take any medication, any narcotics.
I just took Tylenol.
I just took Tylenol for headache.
Good.
They say that your brain doesn't have pain receptors. It's the incision and the wires that hurt.
Well, I had edema, so I had pressure from the swelling on my brain.
Pressures.
Yeah. But I had both surgeries. I had my surgery without any anesthesia. And the thing that had bothered me the most was the noise as they drilled. So I decided to, in preparation for the second surgery, that I would do Floyd Dark Side of the Moon. And I'd do air guitar, and I'd be doing that while they were drilling. And I'm sure Pink Floyd could outshine the rest of them. It was a terrible noise.
The worst part of it for me was, and I was awake the whole time. And the worst part of it was the drilling, which Michelle just mentioned. The drilling can be horrendously loud in your head. The drilling into your head, through your skull. And if you're awake, that's going to make an impression on you.
That's daunting.
Oh my God, the worst.
Yeah, the anesthesiologist again helped me because when they put on the triangle thing to keep your head steady, they have to put in some screws into it to keep it on there. I didn't even feel that at all. I just woke up and this thing was attached to my head in the middle of the surgery, and that was it. I don't remember having that at all.
And again, Benjamin, that was just local?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you don't remember hearing that daunting drilling sound that Paul is talking about?
Not at
It
all.
wasn't bad, the second surgery.
No.
And I didn't have the second surgery. I only had the one.
Interesting. Mike, you had two. Paula, do you remember two?
I had 2 surgeries, and the drilling that I was referring to wasn't putting on the halo. It was putting in the leads.
Right, me too.
That's much worse than the halo screws, which are nothing.
I was really worried about how to stay still, when obviously I had no medication that day and I was going to be dyskinetic. But then I realized they know what the hell they're doing. They know how to take care of dyskinesia, and they made me very comfortable. So it wasn't. I was worried about the weight of my head and that great big circle thing, and it didn't bother me at all. They're experts at getting you comfortable, even after shoulder surgery, because I had shoulder pain. But they were very wonderful. They have all these funny padding bits that they put around you.
Wow.
To help you stay still.
All right, folks. Well, let me change gears just a little bit and ask one more time around the horn who might have any questions. We have several more DBS experienced members than we anticipated, which is great. So we've got almost equal parts DBS experienced and nons. But Gerald, I saw you just put your hand up. Would you like to throw in a question?
Question: if anybody who had DBS played musical instruments or any musical instrument before, and have they experienced any benefit?
Yeah.
Speak to that.
Yeah, I play guitar, and I was playing guitar only about a year or two after my diagnosis, I kind of stopped playing guitar completely. And then I started doing boxing, which helped a little bit. The DBS really got me playing guitar back again where I was before. So the guitar was really able to, I can play now again.
Really? That's great.
Yeah.
So glad to hear that. Gerald, what instrument do you play?
Play rhythm guitar.
Yeah.
And saxophone.
And saxophone. And so you're frustrated right now that PD is infringing on those arts?
More on the guitar than the saxophone.
Yeah. I'm a drummer, in case you can't see what's behind me back there. I have not had DBS, and honest to God, if they would give me DBS just for the sake of my left hand working on the snare better, I would be thrilled right now. Very frustrating, but
I have stiffness in my right hand and my right arm. It's debilitated me, so I can't throw a frisbee with my right arm. And frisbee was like a huge part of my life with my kids, and I can't do it anymore. So that's one of the biggest regrets I have.
Oh, and also I can swim again. I used to be a big swimmer, and I couldn't swim for several years. And then DBS, I can swim now after DBS.
Good. These are encouraging notes. I'm really glad you brought up the musical instrument, Gerald. Karen.
And I play the flute, and I had gone almost to zero, not quite, because my fingers were so slow and I couldn't really make them cover the holes in some cases. And right after the surgery, it got a lot better. My fingers just seemed more supple.
Right.
But now, I don't know, my husband is teaching himself to do more leads on the guitar. And that's my old melody part. So I haven't quite figured out where I fit. And I'm not sure if this is going to be a long-term benefit or not. So jury's still out.
Carrie, did I see you raise your hand? Do you have a question?
No, I was just,
Swatting
I
the
don't have a question. Thank you. I know.
All right,
Swatting the
fair
fly.
enough. Lauren. Lauren or?
Lauren.
Good.
Mike, I have a question for you. What amount of Cinemet were you taking right before you did your DBS?
I was up to about 1,540 milligrams a day of Cinemet in 4 doses. I'm down to, I've cut it by 33%, which is not as much as I'd liked, but the doctor tells me that's fine. Cutting more than 30% is not necessary. It's not, it's not a bad thing, but it's not as much as I wanted, but it's still less than I had been taking. So that's about it.
Thank you. And how long were you awake during this surgery? You said they woke you up, and I know Karen said that that was a hard time. I'm just wondering, how much time that was. I know it can vary.
Yeah. Well, it's about 80% of the surgery. In my case, it's the first 80%. So they bring you into the operating room. The anesthesiologist gets you under a little bit, and you're calm, and then they do their whole thing for a couple of hours. And then I was 5 hours the first surgery, and
7
second, and then 4 third. 3 separate surgeries. That's really unusual because most people don't go in 3 times, just twice. So.
Right.
But it was okay. I mean, you just get used to it. And, the head race part, that's the hard part, is the head race. Really uncomfortable, but for me, that was the only thing that really bothered me. Yep.
Thank you.
Karen, yours was longer, right?
Well, I don't think my actual surgery was longer. I think I was more miserable. I would hear these reports of Mike joking with the medical staff and the doctors and feeling really cool about everything, and I'm like in complete agony. But it wasn't that long. The entire surgery for me, and I did it in one, was 5 to 6 hours.
Oh, Mike, they just liked having you on the table.
Yeah, I do a really good comedy routine. They want to see the comedy routine more than once.
Because they were enjoying your company too much.
The funny thing.
All right, I'm looking around the horn to see if there are any others before we do. Jodine, and then Paula.
I wanted to just ask the folks with intolerable tremors. Did your tremor before your surgery keep you awake at night? Because I'm starting to experience that and thinking I could get intolerable.
It was just constant, and it would keep me up at night, and I would have a hard time falling asleep. I would fall asleep, but I didn't have good sleep at all before that, or before the surgery. And without it, I sleep great, and the tremor was definitely keeping me up.
Did either of you take levodopa during the night?
Yeah,
I
Didn't
did.
help.
it helps, but I was taking so much of it. I don't know, it was making me sick to my stomach. So I was
Levodopa,
having a hard time with that for a while.
levodopa never really worked for me. I was kind of a rare exception. It didn't help my tremor at all. So it's another reason that I'm glad that I had the DBS. Right now, I'm on 1.5 of the smallest amount pills of Cinemet per day.
That's great.
Wow.
In other words, I take almost no medication.
Wow.
It just doesn't make a difference.
I still take quite a bit. I take like 8 of those little pills a day of the Cinemet.
And what are you taking those to treat right now, Mike? If your tremors have Benjamin, if your tremors have gone down nicely, what are the
What are the what?
What are the carbidopa, levodopa helping you with right now?
With my balance, with mostly my balance, like my walking.
Yeah.
When I wake up, I'll take one. I'll just take a Cinemet one before I wake up, and then it'll last about 4 hours. So I'll take it about 6, and then I'll get up and I can walk and I can get around. But if I don't have it, I'll shuffle and I can lose my balance pretty well. But luckily, I have a small house that I can hold the walls pretty well.
Okay.
I was going to add one more thing.
Go ahead, Mike.
I think when all these places like Kaiser or UCSF or Stanford screen whether you're eligible, one of the main criteria, not the only one, many criteria, but one of them is your body responsive, is your PD symptoms responsive to levodopa? Because now they're seeing if it is responsive, that's very important. If it's not responsive, they don't want to, generally speaking, they don't really want to.
Right.
So,
The screener up front.
yeah.
Yeah.
The exception is tremor.
Yeah.
If you have tremor, it helps anyway.
Yeah, I had something. This is Teresa. Well, mine's pretty much all tremor, and I've also got the my muscles will contract. I've got like that one that your body starts contorting, and it's like in my chest area, so it kind of makes it hard to breathe. But I've got different Cimenet, the regular tablets, the 125 100s. I tend to take about 3 of those every 3 hours. And then I've also got the timed ones, the extended time release, which lasts about 4 to 5 hours. And I'll take 2 of those. And at nighttime, I take Rytary. Does anyone take Rytary?
That's Rytary, yeah.
Daytime.
Yeah. Does anyone notice that those are about, I take 2 of those before I go to sleep, but I notice when I do wake up that I'm having a little bit more issues as far as my feet tremor tremendously. And Dr. Klingman over there at Kaiser said it was, well, I was born with Parkinson's. I have 3 markers. And he said that's probably due to the rapid tremor type of thing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Dr. Klingman has been great for me, and he's one of these doctors, well, for me anyway, he just tells me, he says, whatever you want to do with the medication, you can do. If you want to try something, you can try it, and I'll help you with it, but you know as much as me. And I really get more out of talking like in a group like this than anything from my doctor. The best doctor I've had is one who says he doesn't know anything, and he just wants to help to figure out what to do. And he's been great like that.
Okay.
And Teresa, does your tremor start and stop, or is it constant?
Mine is constant and it's rapid, almost like a bunny rabbit's foot. When you see,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, it's pretty rapid. That's the reason why they did the DNA test 22 years ago when I was diagnosed.
Wow.
He had my DNA checked for the Parkinsonian mutation, and they found 3.
3 markers.
Yep. I only needed 2, I guess, but I'm an overachiever.
Good attitude, Teresa.
And did the tremor were you born like that, or did the tremor progress into a more extreme state?
Well, it first started out in my right leg. When I was 18, it was noticed that my leg was shaking. And then my sister has it too. My sister has Parkinson's, and so we're both Parkinsonians, but her left leg shakes and my right leg, but she shakes more hands than like I do in my feet. Her hands are quite rapid also. It's almost like the rabbit when he gets excited and it goes, something like that. That's how fast my tremor is. And yeah, so I guess it's to stop the tremor would be the surgery type thing, but yeah.
Wow.
Any other questions? Linda?
Yes, I have a question. Does this operation help your sleep at all? Does you improve sleep after you have this?
Mike, would you like to start?
No.
No, you don't want to start, or no, it doesn't?
No, it didn't seem to affect my sleep either way. Excuse me. It didn't make it better or worse, in my opinion. That's just my experience.
Didn't affect it. Okay. Thank you.
Karen?
Yeah.
I talked to one person in my lengthy interview process whose sleep improved from, he was getting 2 to 4 hours a night, and after the surgery he was getting 8 or 9 and really good sleep.
I had the issue of that I couldn't roll over in bed. So whenever I wanted to change position, I had to get out of bed and get back into bed. And that would wake me up. So I had terrible sleep before the surgery. And that's one bonus that I got straight away, is I can roll over in bed. Woohoo! It's wonderful. Even though I don't necessarily sleep perfectly, but it gives me a better chance if I don't have to get up every night. And the risk of falling increases too with that. But getting out of bed every time I wanted to change position was terrible.
And Paula?
I sleep really well. However, I would say, these days I'm sleeping really well. But what I would say is that it depends on the programming. I've gone through lots of programming changes. And currently I'm on a program where I sleep really well, like from 10 to 7, long time.
Good.
But I do that because I've gotten it down to the point where I take 1 Cinemat at bedtime along with 1 baby aspirin. That's all I need. And I only do 1.5 Cinemat per day total. So the other half is in.
Teresa, would you say your sleep has improved post DBS?
She hasn't.
I haven't had the surgery yet.
Oh.
It was scheduled.
That's right.
It was scheduled for late March, and then it was just all canceled.
Right. Sorry, Benjamin. Tell us about your sleep improvement or lack thereof.
Pretty good. I never slept great, but right now I sleep pretty well. I sleep about 6 hours a night, and that's about all I've ever needed, is about 6 to get through. And I fall asleep great.
Good. Good question, Linda. Any other questions out there? All right, well, we're 20 minutes past our scheduled time. Why don't we do this? Mike and all of those here with us today that have had DBS, if you would like to give a parting 30-second shot of encouragement or caution for those others that are considering it now, soon, or in the somewhere future, take it away. Mike, would you like to start?
Sure, I would say, if you don't already have a good neurologist who's a movement specialist in Parkinson's, get one. Trust their judgment. See several people about their recommendation for DBS. A good place, a good screening, because it all matters. And trust your instinct and do your own research after that. Yeah, that's like
We'll come back to you, Amy. Karen.
That sounds good, Mike. I like that program. I would say that it could be very helpful to have somebody who's kind of your buddy through this process. If any people in the Parkinson's community are willing to do that. Mike, you had a kind of, what would you call it, helper in the operation itself that Kaiser provided, which sounded great. I'm thinking more of the decision-making process and the nitty-gritty of what you have to go through to
Or
get
a family member, or
DBS.
your partner.
Yeah, family member, you know, you might, maybe if you're lucky, you have a sister or brother or something like that. But if you don't, maybe there's somebody who's had it, who's willing to play that role.
Paula, would you care to give us any votes of encouragement, thoughts of encouragement?
I would be too long-winded, so I won't say anything. But like Mike said, I had Diana Kaiser in Redwood City, and Diana Bruce was my helper, and she's great.
Yeah, good. Benjamin, you're an inherited panelist. What do you think?
I'll just go with to follow up with what Karen said. I had people lined up to come out to my house to stay with me and my kids and my wife for a couple weeks after the surgery. And it was just good to have somebody around because nobody was around during the day. So I had the surgery, and then I had a good friend of my family's came out for a week, and then my sister came out for a week. And it was just nice to have them there with me.
Nice.
Yeah, ditto.
It's nice to have a good support structure.
Yeah, definitely.
Michelle, have you got any final thoughts on encouragement or caution?
Yeah, I do. I want to give heads up that my kids are just amazing, but I had no idea it was going to take this long. I'm still dependent on one of my children living with me, and so my son is here, and they didn't really buy into this long. Because there's no end in sight as to when I'm going to be independent, and that's very difficult for them. They luckily live close by, so I'm very happy. But it's been a big strain on them.
Good.
So kudos to my kids.
Good for your kids. Again, so nice to have a valuable support structure. Amy, I promise we come full circle. You are the valuable perspective of the care partner and the pal for your buddy Mike. What would you give us in terms of encouragement or caution?
On the encouragement side, well, following what Karen was saying too, and I guess I said it too, that I think get a partner to help you through this whole process. And like I said, adult child, a really close friend, a family member if you don't have a live-in partner. And become part of the process. You know, that this is something that can bring, if you are married, you have a partner, or the person you choose to be close to can bring you closer. I think it's, if at all possible, it really helps if you're on the same page so that you're prepared for the benefits and the challenges that come with it. I also just want to say to those, we have one daughter. She's not all that old. She was 24 when we went through it. And I think let people in your life know what's happening and let them, I don't think it helps to block people out. When someone says they want to help you, say yes. Be aware of what your needs are as a care partner too. That you know, my friends were invaluable. My daughter was invaluable, so that I had someone to give me support or bring meals over, and so you really feel your connection to the community, not just to your primary relationship. Caution, just do your research and try to be hopeful, and you know, you hope for the best, but there are some things that won't change, and as we see here by everybody's experience, there are some negative things that could happen, you know, but you know, we're living at a time of things being unpredictable too, you know, and of course that's the reality of Parkinson's also, but I still would feel, you know, after you've done your research, after you've talked to people, after you've talked it out with the people closest to you and you trust your intuition, it can be a great thing to do.
Good.
Can I add just one thing?
Sure.
When you get out of surgery and you start to understand what the side effects of the process are, like it could be bad balance, it could be bad speech of some sort. Don't take that as your sentence. Don't take that as a permanent thing. I think before we have surgery, we work on whatever we have to change, and that attitude, we need to keep that attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there's nothing to be done through medication, but that doesn't mean that exercise or physical therapy or something like that might not help with a problem. So just get in there and work on a symptom one at a time, and you can sometimes make really good progress.
Benjamin, did you want to chime in?
I played handball competitively for many years, and I hadn't played for like 5 years. And then I started playing just recently, actually within the last year, I started playing again. And I have to adjust my expectations quite a bit. But
Right.
the thing is, I'm out there playing handball, and I'm losing to everybody I used to beat the crap out of. It feels so good to be able to be active again.
Yeah. So it's changing.
I wasn't like that.
It's changing our bars and changing our expectations. I think that's a big lesson we can take away from this. But wise, Karen, I like those thoughts too. If there aren't any other questions or feedback, I'd like to wrap up. Anybody else have any other last minute questions? Mike?
No, I want to thank you, Todd, for, and Mary for helping set this whole thing up. It's really a nice kind of event to have. Pediatrics should do more of these, and people should all donate if we can to support pediatrics. Another plug there. So.
Well, thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
And right back at you. Thank you to Mike and Amy and Karen, but also to our impromptu panelists, Benjamin, Paula, and Michelle. So thank you for your valuable feedback.
I want to say Pediatrics has been the most invaluable resource I've got. The support I get from Pediatrics and the people I've met have just been amazing.
Good. I'm glad to hear that, Michelle. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. On a personal note, I'm thrilled to learn that we have the makings of a pediatric band coming up here soon. So
hey, a DBS band.
DBS band. We can come up with lots of different meanings for that. That's good. All right, folks. Well, I hope you've benefited from this.
Thank you.
Feel free to offer any feedback. My email is in the invite. If you have further questions or feedback on the session, please lob them our way. We're wide open to commentary because this is our first inaugural launch of one of these roundtable formats. So if there are ways to do it better, we'd like to do that. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you, everyone.
Wonderful
Thank you.
work,
Bye-bye.
Todd. Thank you.
Bye.